The morning started like many others, quiet and predictable. He woke before the alarm as he often did, staring at the ceiling while the city outside slowly came to life. Traffic sounds floated through the open window. Somewhere nearby, a child laughed. Somewhere else, a door slammed. Life moved forward, whether he felt ready or not. He got out of bed, made his coffee too strong, and stood by the window holding the warm cup in both hands. His face looked calm to anyone who might see it, but inside, there was a tired heaviness he had carried for years. He had learned to live with it. He went to work on time, paid his bills, answered people kindly, and did everything expected of him. Still, when the day slowed down, he felt the same empty space return. His past had shaped him more than he liked to admit. A loss long ago had taught him not to hope too much, not to expect happiness to last. He believed love was something that happened to other people, something seen in stories and movies, not in real life. Over time, his heart had grown careful, almost shy, hiding behind routine and responsibility. Across the city, she was beginning her day as well. Her alarm rang once, twice, and on the third ring she finally reached out to turn it off. She lay still for a moment, gathering her strength before getting up. Her days were full, always filled with tasks, expectations, and people who depended on her. She rarely complained. She told herself that this was life, and she accepted it. She prepared breakfast, checking her phone for messages that might need her attention. Someone always needed something. She did not mind helping others, but sometimes she wondered who would be there for her if she ever stopped being strong. She dressed quickly and left the house with practiced steps, carrying her worries quietly, tucked away behind a polite smile. Neither of them knew that their paths were slowly moving toward each other. There was no sign, no feeling, no sudden moment that hinted at what was coming. It was just another day, ordinary in every way. Their first meeting happened in the most unremarkable manner. No dramatic introduction. No music. No instant connection. Just a shared space and a simple exchange of words. It could have easily meant nothing. He was focused on a small problem at work, something that needed careful attention. She arrived because of a responsibility that had suddenly fallen on her shoulders. She stood nearby, unsure of where to go next, scanning the room with quiet confusion. He noticed her because she looked slightly out of place. It's like someone trying not to disturb anyone. When she asked a simple question, he answered without much thought. His voice was calm, steady, and respectful. She thanked him and moved on. That should have been the end of it. Hours later, he realized he remembered her voice. It surprised him. He could not place why it stayed with him, but it did. It was gentle, not weak. Careful, but confident. He brushed the thought aside and returned to his work. She, on the other hand, barely noticed him at first. Her thoughts were elsewhere, tied to the long list of things waiting for her later that day. Still, when she thought back to the moment, she remembered his eyes. They were not curious or judging. They simply noticed her, as if her presence mattered, even in that brief second. The days moved forward. Work continued. Responsibilities piled up. Life stayed busy. Yet chance, as it often does, found reasons to place them in the same spaces again. Short conversations followed. Polite words turned into small updates, then into light comments about the day. Nothing personal, nothing risky. He noticed that he did not feel rushed when she was around. Usually, he preferred quiet and distance. With her silence, felt comfortable instead of heavy. He did not try to explain it. He did not even question it. He simply accepted the calm. She noticed something different too. When she spoke to him, she felt heard. Not just listened to, but truly heard. He did not interrupt. He did not rush to respond. He waited, giving her words time to settle. It made her feel strangely at ease. Still, both of them remained cautious. Life had taught them that comfort could disappear quickly. They shared nothing too personal. They laughed lightly and spoke carefully. Their connection grew, but slowly. It's like something finding its way through cracks rather than open space. One afternoon, small inconvenience turned into an unexpected moment. She had forgotten something important and grew anxious, knowing it might cause trouble later. Panic showed on her face before she could hide it. He noticed immediately. Without drawing attention, he offered help. Not loudly, not heroically. Just quietly stepping in, solving the issue as if it were nothing. To him, it was a simple act. To her, it felt like relief she had not realized she needed. She thanked him this time with more feeling than before. Their eyes met for a brief second, longer than usual. Something passed between them then. Not love. Not yet. Just recognition. That moment lingered with both of them long after the day ended. That evening, he walked home thinking about how easily he had offered help. It was unlike him. He usually kept distance, protecting his emotional space. Yet with her, his guard had lowered without effort. He wondered when that had happened. She, sitting alone later that night, replayed the day in her mind. Among all the noise and tasks, his calm presence stood out. She realized she felt lighter after talking to him. It confused her more than it comforted her. They did not call each other. They did not exchange long messages. They simply carried the quiet awareness into the next day. Over the following weeks, their conversations became part of the day's rhythm. A greeting in the morning, a few words exchanged in passing, some days longer than others. There was comfort in knowing the other existed nearby. People around them noticed small changes. He smiled more without realizing it. She seemed less tense, more grounded. Neither of them talked about why. Still, fears remained. His told him not to open up, reminding him of pain that once followed hope. Hers told her not to expect too much, reminding her of times she had given more than she received. So they stayed where it felt safe, balancing between connection and distance. One evening, as the sun dipped low and shadows stretched across the street, they found themselves walking in the same direction after a long day. The air was quiet, filled with the soft noise of the city slowing down. They walked side by side without planning it. At first, neither spoke. Then one of them made a simple comment about the weather, something anyone could say. The other responded. The conversation flowed easily, surprising them both. They spoke about daily struggles, about being tired, about small victories that no one else noticed. Nothing deeply personal, yet somehow meaningful. For the first time, both felt a gentle pull toward something new. It was not exciting or overwhelming. It was calm. It felt real when they reached the corner where their paths separated. There was a pause. Not awkward, but thoughtful. They wished each other a good evening and walked away. Neither turned back. But both carried the same thought home. Something had begun, quietly and without promise. Neither knew what it would become. They only knew that life felt slightly different than it had before. And in that small shift, unnoticed by the world, the first chapter of a love story had started, one built not on grand moments, but on patience, presence, and two hearts slowly learning to feel again. The days after that evening walk did not suddenly change their lives. Nothing dramatic happened the next morning. There were no late-night messages or bold confessions. Life stayed exactly the same on the outside. Yet something inside both of them had shifted, even if they did not have words for it. He noticed it first in small ways. He started waking up with a little more energy. The heaviness did not disappear, but it felt lighter, more manageable. While getting ready for work, his thoughts drifted to simple moments from the day before. A shared smile, a calm conversation. He caught himself replaying those moments and quickly pushed the thoughts away, telling himself not to read too much into them. She felt it too. While going through her busy routine, her mind wandered more than usual. During quiet moments, she found herself thinking about how easy it felt to talk to him. No effort, no pretending. That alone made her nervous. Ease had fooled her before, and she had learned to be careful with her feelings. When they saw each other again, they behaved as they always had. A short greeting, a polite smile. But something was different. Both sensed it, though neither mentioned it. Their conversations lasted a little longer. Their pauses felt less uncomfortable. Even silence between them held a soft weight instead of emptiness. As days turned into weeks, they slowly learned each other's habits. He learned that she always arrived a little early, never liking to rush. She learned that he preferred staying a little late, finishing tasks quietly when the space around him grew calm. These small observations meant more than they admitted. Sometimes they talked about simple things, daily frustrations, small wins no one else cared about. Once she spoke about feeling tired without explaining why. He did not ask questions. He simply nodded and said he understood. And strangely, she believed him. He shared just as little. When he spoke about work or life, he kept his words careful. Still, she could sense the distance he kept from certain topics. She did not push. Respect flowed easily between them, forming a bond built on trust rather than curiosity. One afternoon, a mistake not caused by either of them created tension around them. Voices rose. Blame was passed quickly. Stress filled the space. She felt her chest tighten as she tried to keep calm. He noticed it from across the room. After everything settled, he approached her quietly. "You handled that well," he said. His words were simple but genuine. She seemed surprised. "I didn't feel like I did," she replied honestly. "That doesn't always matter," he said. "Sometimes the effort is enough." Those words stayed with her. No one had spoken to her like that before. No pressure. No judgment. Just understanding. Later that day, she thanked him again for noticing. This time, the gratitude carried something deeper. He nodded, unsure of how to respond. But feeling something warm settle in his chest, they began to lean on each other in subtle ways. Not dramatically. Not openly. Just enough to make the days easier. If he had a difficult moment, she was there with a steady presence. If she seemed overwhelmed, he found quiet ways to ease the pressure. Neither called it friendship. Neither called it anything. Labels felt unnecessary and risky. Outside their shared space, life continued to test them. Old responsibilities did not disappear. Family expectations weighed on her shoulders as much as before. Some nights she returned home completely drained, wondering how much longer she could keep carrying everything alone. He, on the other hand, struggled with memories he avoided by staying busy. Late at night, when the world grew quiet, those memories found him anyway. Loss, disappointment, moments he wished he could relive differently. He had learned to live without hope, believing it kept him safe. Slowly, without realizing it, both began to soften. One evening, a simple conversation turned more personal than they expected. It started harmlessly, with a comment about feeling exhausted. Then she admitted for the first time that she often felt invisible in her own life. The words slipped out before she could stop them. The room grew quiet. She worried she had shared too much. Instead of pulling away, he listened. Truly listened. His expression did not change, but his attention deepened. When she finished speaking, he did not rush to comfort her or offer advice. He simply said, "That sounds incredibly lonely." Her eyes filled with tears she did not let fall. Someone finally understood without explanation. She asked him nothing in return. But he surprised himself by sharing a small truth of his own. "I got used to being alone," he said. "Not because I wanted to be, but because it felt easier." It was not a full confession. It was just enough. From that moment, something fragile formed between them. A shared understanding of loneliness. A quiet agreement to be gentle with each other. They did not rush forward. Fear kept them steady. Both had been hurt by hoping before. Both knew how quickly connection could fade, yet they also knew they looked forward to seeing each other. That realization scared them. There were moments of doubt, days when one of them pulled back slightly only to feel the absence immediately. When that happened, they returned carefully, like someone testing ground after a long fall. Others began to notice more clearly now. The way they stood closer than before. The way their voices softened around each other. Some offered curious glances. Some whispered assumptions. Neither paid much attention. One afternoon, she laughed without holding back. It surprised even her. The sound felt foreign, like something remembered from long ago. He paused, watching her, realizing how much he enjoyed seeing her like that. That night, he went home wondering when he had last felt this way. That quiet anticipation, that warmth. She went home wondering if she was allowed to hope again. Their bond grew through ordinary days rather than special events. A shared meal taken quickly. A walk that happened naturally. A message sent to check if the other arrived home safely. Nothing about it felt planned. It felt earned. Still, both remained guarded. Love hovered nearby, unspoken, unnamed. Neither stepped forward to claim it. In their hearts, a quiet question formed. What if this could become something more? And just as that question took root, life prepared to test them, reminding them that real connections are never free from challenge, unaware of what lay ahead. They continued forward, one careful step at a time, building a bond that felt steady, real, and dangerously meaningful. Change rarely arrives loudly. Most of the time, it slips in quietly, hidden behind routines and familiar faces. That was how trouble began for them too. At first, it showed up as small disruptions, missed conversations, delayed replies, days when they passed each other without the usual ease. Neither meant for it to happen, but life had begun pulling at them from different directions. He became busier than usual. A situation at work demanded more of his time and focus. Long hours returned, the kind that left him mentally drained and emotionally distant. He told himself it was temporary, just something that needed handling. Still, he did not notice how often he stopped looking for her in the room. She noticed. Though she told herself she was imagining it, everyone gets busy. Everyone has off days. But the absence she felt was real, and it unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. The ease they once shared felt thinner now, stretched by unspoken tension. When they did speak, the conversations felt shorter. Still kind, still respectful, but quieter. Something held back. She considered asking him what was wrong. The question stayed on her tongue more than once. Each time, fear stopped her. She worried about crossing an invisible line, about asking for more than he was willing or able to give. He, on the other hand, sensed her distance too, but misunderstood it. He assumed she was pulling away. The thought brought back old fears he thought he had buried. Maybe he had imagined their closeness. Maybe he had opened up just enough to feel the familiar sting of disappointment. Neither spoke. Silence has a way of growing when left alone. One afternoon, an unexpected comment from someone nearby struck deeper than it should have. It was casual, careless, and not meant to harm. But it planted doubt. She heard something that made her question his intentions. A suggestion that he was simply kind by nature, that he treated everyone the same way, that she might have mistaken his behavior for something it was not. She tried to brush it off, but the words stayed with her. Doubt has a quiet voice, but it speaks clearly. That evening, she watched him from across the room. Noticing how calm he seemed around others, friendly, polite, familiar, exactly. How he had been with her in the beginning. A tightness formed in her chest. He noticed her watching him, but when their eyes met, she looked away. That small movement felt larger than it was. It stirred something painful and old inside him. He recognized that feeling. It was the same one he felt years ago, when he had trusted someone who left. The distance between them grew heavier in that moment. Days passed without resolution. Each seemed to wait for the other to speak first. Pride played its quiet role, as pride often does. She told herself she needed clarity, yet feared the answer. He told himself he needed space, yet felt the loss immediately. Then came the moment that changed everything. A misunderstanding. Small in reality, but large in feeling, surfaced suddenly. Words were overheard. Context was missing. Feelings filled the gaps where truth was absent. She confronted him not angrily, but with a visible ache in her eyes. He was caught off guard, unprepared for the weight of her hurt. I thought... She stopped herself, struggling to continue. I thought this meant more. The words hung between them. He froze. The past rushed back all at once. Expectations, disappointment, the fear of failing someone again. I never promised anything, he said quickly. Not unkindly, but defensively. The words landed harder than he expected. Her expression changed instantly. The pain on her face was quiet but undeniable. She nodded slowly, as if gathering broken pieces inside herself. "I understand," she said softly, though it was clear she did not. She walked away before either of them could say more that night. Neither slept well. She replayed his words over and over, questioning her instincts, blaming herself for hoping. She felt foolish for opening up, for allowing herself to believe someone might choose her willingly. He sat in silence, realizing too late how his words had sounded. He had meant to protect himself, but instead, he had hurt someone who had only offered honesty. The days that followed were heavy. They avoided each other at first. When they had to cross paths, their interactions were distant and formal. What once felt natural now felt forced. Others noticed the shift immediately. Where warmth once flowed easily, there was now restraint and tension. Questions formed, but no one asked them. She withdrew into herself, returning to survival mode. She focused on her responsibilities with renewed determination, telling herself she had been strong before and could be strong again. He did the same, throwing himself into work, trying to drown out regret with exhaustion. But avoidance does not erase connection. It only makes its absence more painful. One evening, after a long day had emptied him completely, he realized he missed her more than he could ignore. Not just her presence, but the way she made the world feel steadier. He thought about the way she listened, the way she laughed softly at small things, the trust she had offered him without asking for certainty. And he realized something uncomfortable. He had been afraid of calling it love. Fear had shaped his response, not lack of feeling. Meanwhile, she struggled with letting go. She told herself his words were clear, that she should respect them and move on. Yet her heart argued quietly, reminding her of moments that felt real. She wondered if she should have spoken sooner. If silence had helped create the misunderstanding, the weight of unfinished words pressed down on both of them, then fate, as it often does, placed them together again when neither was prepared. An unexpected situation forced interaction, leaving no room for avoidance. The atmosphere was tense. Both felt exposed at first. They spoke only about what was necessary, their words clipped and careful. But something fragile lingered beneath the surface. Finally, he broke the silence. "I didn't explain myself well," he said quietly. She looked at him, guarded but listening. "I wasn't saying I don't care," he continued. "I was saying I was scared." Those words shifted everything. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I wasn't asking for promises," she said. "I just wanted honesty." They stood there, the air heavy with unspoken truth. For the first time, they truly looked at each other without guards fully raised. He admitted his fear of losing what little peace he had rebuilt. She admitted her fear of giving her heart again without safety. The conversation did not fix everything. Pain does not disappear that easily, but it opened a door that had almost closed forever. They agreed on one thing. They did not want to walk away without understanding each other fully. That night ended without resolution, but with possibility. Trust had been shaken, but not destroyed. They walked away knowing something important. Love, when real, demands courage. And courage was something they were slowly learning they might be capable of after all. Time did not rush to heal anything between them. Days passed with careful distance. They spoke when necessary, but neither pushed too far. After everything said and unsaid, silence felt safer than reopening wounds too quickly. Yet silence also gave them space to think. He began to understand how much fear had guided his choices. For years, he had built his life around control. If he expected little, he could not be disappointed. If he stayed guarded, he could not be hurt. That way of living had kept him functioning, but it had also kept him alone now. The idea of losing her weighed heavily on him. He realized it was not the argument that bothered him most. It was the thought of returning to a life where she no longer existed in his daily world. The quiet that once felt familiar now felt empty. He reflected on the moment she had said she thought it meant more. Not with anger, but with honesty. He saw now how brave that had been. She had reached out without certainty, something he had not done for a very long time. Shame followed that realization. Meanwhile, She spent her evenings thinking about her own patterns. She recognized how icily she retreated when hurt, how quickly she convinced herself that silence was strength. Carrying everything alone had become her habit. Letting someone close meant risking disappointment all over again. But she could not deny how real those moments with him had felt. The care, the steady presence, the way he noticed, without being asked. Those were not illusions created by hope. They were real experiences, and dismissing them now felt dishonest. She started to see that both of them had spoken from fear, not truth. One evening she stayed back later than usual, unsure why she had not left when she could. He was there too, sitting quietly, focused, but clearly lost in thought. The air between them felt fragile, but not hostile. She considered walking away instead. She spoke. "I've been thinking," she said softly, careful not to sound accusing. "About what we said last time." He looked up, surprised but attentive. "I don't think either of us wanted to hurt the other," she continued. "We were just protecting ourselves." He nodded slowly. "That's true," he said. "I didn't realize how much I was still living in the past." Her shoulders relaxed slightly. The honesty in his voice mattered. They talked for a long time that evening. Not emotionally, not dramatically, just honestly. They spoke about fear without assigning blame. About how expectations had scared him. About how uncertainty had scared her. They listened more than they spoke. There were moments when words failed them. Silence returned. This time, it didn't feel like distance. It felt like processing. At the end of the conversation, neither made promises. They did not define what they were or where things were going. But they agreed on something important. They would try again, slowly, with clearer communication. Without assumptions, that decision changed something. Over the next day's effort replaced avoidance. He noticed himself choosing to speak instead of withdrawing. When something bothered him, he said it quietly rather than letting it build into walls. She noticed herself asking questions instead of imagining answers. When doubt crept in, she voiced it gently instead of retreating. It wasn't easy. There were moments when old habits returned. Times when one of them fell quiet and the other felt panic rise. But now, those moments were addressed instead of ignored. Trust, they discovered, was not about perfection. It was about repair. They grew closer not through grand gestures, but through consistent care. A message checking in during a hard day. A shared break taken just to breathe. A quiet walk where talking was optional. One afternoon, rain caught them by surprise. They stood under a small shelter, close enough to feel each other's presence without touching. The sound of rain filled the space around them. "This feels peaceful," she said softly. He smiled. "It does." That moment stayed with both of them. It felt like a sign of what they were building. Still, life did not pause to make things easier. External pressures returned, heavier than before. Responsibilities, expectations, and difficult decisions waited for both of them outside this connection. He faced demands that forced him to consider changes he had avoided. She faced obligations that asked more of her time and emotional energy. Stress followed. They felt it shaping their moods, testing their patience. Minor misunderstandings resurfaced. Fatigue made communication harder, but this time, they stood on the same side. Instead of turning against each other, they turned toward each other. When tension rose, they slowed down. When words came out wrong, they corrected them. One night, he admitted something he had never said out loud before. "I don't know how to do this perfectly," he said, "but I want to learn." Her response was immediate and sincere. "I don't need perfect. I need honest." That exchange settled something deep within both of them. The bond they were forming felt different from anything either had known. It wasn't driven by excitement alone. It was built on understanding, patience, and mutual effort. They began including each other naturally in their thoughts about the future. Not boldly. Not with certainty, but gently, as if making room instead of drawing plans. There were small sacrifices, too. He rearranged parts of his routine to create space for connection. She allowed herself to lean on him when she normally would not. Each choice felt intentional. Others noticed the change again. The tension that once surrounded them softened. Their interaction showed ease and respect. Whatever distance had nearly separated them now seemed replaced by something stronger. Yet one question lingered beneath everything. Were they ready to fully choose each other? The answer did not come immediately. One quiet evening, as they walked together after another long day, she stopped and looked at him. "If this ever becomes too much," she said carefully, "I'd rather know than guess." He met her gaze. "I promise you that," he said. "No more silence." That promise carried weight. In that moment, they both understood what they were doing. They were choosing presence over fear, courage over comfort. They were choosing love, not as a feeling, but as a responsibility. The path ahead was still uncertain. Challenges would return. Doubt might rise again. But now, they faced the future with open eyes and open hearts. Something strong had taken root. And for the first time, both believed it might last. Life rarely announces when a turning point arrives. For them, it came through a series of quiet choices made over time. Each day, they chose to show up for each other, even when it felt hard. Even when fear whispered that retreat would be easier, the bond they had built began to settle into something steady. Not dramatic, not loud, just real. Mornings felt lighter knowing the other existed in their world. Even difficult days felt manageable when shared. If only through a few words or a moment of understanding they learned how to move together through life's challenges. When stress rose, they spoke instead of shutting down. When misunderstandings appeared, they slowed down and listened. Mistakes still happened, but repair followed quickly. The distance that once scared them no longer defined them. Over time, love became visible in the smallest details. He noticed when she grew tired before she said a word. She noticed when he carried worry silently. Care showed up through patience rather than promises. There came a moment when both realized something important. The fear that once controlled them had lost its power. It still existed, quiet and distant, but it no longer guided their decisions. That realization didn't arrive through a big conversation. It settled in gently, like a truth both felt at the same time. One evening, as they sat together in comfortable silence, she spoke without rehearsing her words. "You feel like home," she said simply. He did not answer immediately. He looked at her, emotion rising unexpectedly. Then he said, "I didn't know home could feel this safe." From that moment, certainty grew. Their commitment deepened naturally. They began planning life together in small, realistic ways. Not dreams built on fantasy, but plans shaped by understanding. They talked about future challenges openly, acknowledging that love would not solve everything, but it would give them strength to face whatever came. When difficulties appeared, they faced them side by side. Loss, disappointment, and uncertainty returned, as they always do in life. This time, neither faced them alone. She learned how to rest when needed. He learned how to hope again. Their relationship did not seek attention, yet attention found them anyway. People noticed the quiet strength between them. Some asked how they made it work. Others watched silently, inspired without understanding why. It wasn't a perfect story. It was a real one. At some point, a simple moment shared publicly reached people far beyond their circle. A conversation captured, a reflection shared, a quiet truth spoken with honesty. It resonated because it was not polished or dramatic. People recognized themselves in it. Messages followed. Stories poured in from strangers who had faced the same fears, the same doubts, the same loneliness. Their experience gave others permission to believe that love did not have to be loud to be meaningful. They were surprised by the response. They never intended to inspire anyone. They had only been trying to survive and love each other better. As time continued, their story grew larger than them. It reminded people that healing is possible, that patience matters, that choosing each other every day is the truest form of love. Through it all, they remained grounded. Fame never became the focus. Staying connected did. Years later, when life slowed and memories gathered gently around them, They often reflected on how things began. No fireworks. No certainty. Just two people learning how to be present. They understood now that love does not begin with knowing. It begins with choosing. When people asked what made their connection special, they struggled to explain. How do you describe something built on listening, consistency, and care? So they told the truth. We didn't save each other, she would say. We walked together. We kept walking, he would add. That simple truth touched millions of hearts. Not because it was extraordinary, but because it was honest. In the end, their story was never about perfection. It was about two ordinary people who refused to give up when things became uncomfortable. They chose courage over fear. They chose love again and again, and in doing so, they reminded the world that real love still exists, quietly changing lives one honest choice at a time, even after their story reached people far beyond their own lives. Their days remained simple. They still woke up early, still worried about ordinary things, still disagreed now and then. Love had not removed life's weight, but it had changed how they carried it. They learned that long-term love is less about excitement and more about attention. Noticing when the other is quiet, asking before assuming, staying present even when the world pulls hard in other directions. As time passed, new challenges arrived. Responsibilities grew. Expectations shifted. There were moments when exhaustion tested their patience and silence threatened to return. But experience had taught them something valuable. Silence no longer meant safety. Communication did, so they kept talking. Some conversations were easy. Others were uncomfortable. But honesty became their habit, not their exception. They learned how to disagree without hurting each other. They learned how to apologize without defending every mistake. These lessons did not come naturally. They were practiced imperfectly, again and again. Life asked for sacrifices. Sometimes his plans had to wait. Sometimes her needs came first. Other times the balance shifted the other way. They stopped keeping score and started trusting that fairness would take care of itself over time. There were moments when one of them stumbled emotionally, pulled back by old fears that never fully disappear. In those moments, the other did not panic. They had learned that fear is not failure. It is simply a reminder to slow down. Their connection deepened through shared experiences that had nothing to do with romance. Sitting quietly during difficult news, holding each other steady through loss, celebrating small victories no one else noticed. These moments bound them stronger than any grand declaration ever could. People continued reaching out to them. Some asked for advice. Others simply shared gratitude. Many said the same thing in different words. We thought love was gone for us. Hearing that always humbled them. They never positioned themselves as experts. They spoke only from lived experience. They reminded people that love does not require perfection, timing, or luck. It requires effort, courage, and patience. Sometimes, that message reached someone at exactly the right moment. As years went on, their story softened into something steady and lasting. Passion matured into partnership. Excitement made room for peace. They stopped wondering what love was supposed to feel like and started appreciating what it actually felt like. Safe, honest, real, they found happiness in routines, shared meals, quiet evenings, a familiar presence that never felt boring. What once might have seemed ordinary now felt precious. Looking back, they realized how easily they could have lost each other. One misunderstanding, one unspoken fear, one moment of pride could have changed everything. They were grateful they had chosen differently occasionally. Occasionally they spoke about the early days, about how unsure they both were. Those conversations always ended the same way, with quiet amazement that they had made it through by simply refusing to give up. Their love never became a performance. It stayed private, protected, grounded. Even as their story continued to inspire others, they kept their focus where it belonged, on each other, toward the later years. When time felt faster and moments passed more quickly, gratitude settled deeply into their lives. Gratitude for choosing courage when fear felt easier. Gratitude for finding each other when neither was looking, They understood now that love is not found. It is built, and they had built something strong. If there was one lesson their journey offered, it was simple. Real love does not rescue you from life. It gives you someone willing to face life with you. That truth stayed with those who heard their story. It stayed because it was gentle, believable, and earned in the end. Their love did not change the world loudly. It changed it quietly, one heart at a time. Time continued its quiet movement, measured not in years anymore, but in moments. They noticed it in little signs. Hair graying slowly, energy fading earlier in the evening, a deeper appreciation for mornings that began without hurry. Their love had settled into something steady and familiar, yet never dull. They still learned new things about each other, even after sharing so much life together. Growth did not stop. It simply changed pace. There were days when they talked very little. Silence had become a comfortable companion, not a threat. Sitting side by side, doing separate things, knowing neither felt alone. That kind of peace had taken years to build. They continued facing life as it came. Health worries appeared. Plans sometimes shifted without warning. Loss visited again, as it always does. This time, grief did not isolate them. It drew them closer. When one felt weak, the other became stronger. Not by fixing, but by staying. They learned that love at this stage looked different. It was not about proving anything. It was about presence. About showing up even when words felt unnecessary. Sometimes they shared memories from their past lives before they had met. Stories once spoken carefully now flowed freely. Painful moments softened with understanding. Joyful ones were celebrated together. Even if they had happened long before their paths crossed, those conversations brought them closer still. Knowing the full shape of each other's lives made admiration deeper, not heavier. People around them often commented on their calm. They seemed grounded in a way that felt rare. When asked the secret, they often smiled. "There is no secret," one of them would say. "Just effort." An effort they had learned is quieter than romance, but far more powerful. There were moments when the world outside felt loud and uncertain. News came and went. Times changed quickly. Through it all, they stayed rooted in what mattered: being kind, listening, choosing each other again. They supported one another's individual growth as well. Love did not shrink their worlds. It expanded them. Encouragement replaced fear. Pride replaced doubt. They understood now that love does not mean losing yourself. It means becoming more fully who you are, alongside someone who sees you clearly. As years passed, they found meaning in giving back quietly, offering kindness where they could, speaking gently when people needed reassurance. Their story was no longer something they talked about often. It lived in how they treated others. Sometimes someone recognized them, someone who had once found comfort in hearing their words. These moments were always humbling. They accepted them with gratitude, never forgetting that they were once people searching for answers themselves, in quieter moments. They reflected on the path behind them, how fragile everything had been in the beginning, how easily fear could have won. They felt thankful for every hard conversation they did not avoid, every apology they chose to give. Every time they stayed when leaving would have been simpler. Love, they realized, is built not by avoiding pain, but by trusting each other through it. As the seasons passed, their connection only deepened. It was no longer something they questioned. It simply was. There was comfort in that certainty. They had grown older, wiser, softer. The edges that once caused harm had been shaped into understanding. Looking at each other now, they did not see youth or perfection. They saw shared history, shared mistakes, shared resilience, and above all, shared choice. Choice made again and again. If love had a final lesson, this was it. It is not loud. It is not perfect. It is patient. And when tended with care, it lasts. Their story continued, not as a tale of excitement, but as proof That real love endures long after the world stops paying attention, quietly, faithfully together. As the years continued, their life entered a quieter chapter. Not quieter in meaning, but in movement. The fast pace of earlier days slowed, giving space for reflection, gratitude, deeper understanding. They no longer measured time by milestones or achievements. Instead, they measured it by shared mornings, familiar routines, and evenings that ended with calm conversation or gentle silence. Their love had become a constant presence, like warmth in a room you do not notice until it is gone. It supported them without demanding attention. There were moments when one of them would pause and simply watch the other. In those moments, there was no urgency, no desire to change anything, just appreciation. They had learned what truly mattered. Health became something they paid closer attention to. Appointments, small worries, adjustments to habits. These things arrived quietly, reminding them of life's fragility. When fear surfaced, they faced it together. A hand held during difficult conversations, reassuring words spoken softly. They understood now that love, in its deepest form, is caretaking without obligation. Some days were harder than others. Fatigue lingered longer. Small pains took more time to fade. On those days, patience replaced ambition. Rest replaced urgency. They never saw this as loss. They saw it as transition. Their connection grew gentler, yet stronger. They no longer needed constant proof of love. It lived in routine, in reliability, in showing up, even when there was nothing to gain. They often spoke about how unexpected everything had been. Neither had been searching for love when they found each other. Neither believed it would last as it did. That made every day feel like a gift. Sometimes, they revisited places tied to their early days. A familiar path, a quiet corner. Standing there, they remembered how unsure they had been. How small moments had slowly built something unbreakable. They smiled at those memories, not with longing, but with gratitude. As time passed, people still reached out. Younger voices now. People standing where they once had, unsure, afraid, doubting whether love was possible anymore. They listened more than they spoke. And when they did offer words, they kept them simple. Be patient, be honest, stay when it's hard. Those words carried weight because they were lived. They never portrayed love as easy. They never hid the cost. They believed that honesty was the greatest kindness they could offer. In private moments, they reflected on what they had each sacrificed. Pride, comfort, old defenses. Each sacrifice had made space for something stronger. They realized that the life they built together was never guaranteed. It was chosen, day after day, as the world around them continued to change. They remained steady. Technology evolved. Society shifted. Values were debated. Through it all, they held on to what grounded them. Respect, kindness, commitment. These principles guided them. Long after excitement had faded, they found joy in simplicity. A shared meal, a shared laugh, a quiet understanding that words sometimes failed to capture. Occasionally, there were moments of sadness. Time brings them inevitably. They allowed space for that too. Love, they had learned, makes room for every emotion. One evening, as light faded outside the window, one of them spoke quietly. "I'm glad we didn't give up," the other nodded. No reply was needed. That single truth held their entire story. They had not created a perfect life. They had created a real one, and that was enough. Their journey continued, not as something dramatic or extraordinary, but as proof that love can grow stronger when given time, patience, and care. A quiet example, a lasting one, built on the simple, powerful decision to keep choosing each other